Please note that you're able to provide public comment. Please register by sending an email to OCPC.
Recording stopped.
With public comment in the subject line, we will also allow community members attending by phone to register for public comment by voice. For those wishing to do so at the beginning of the public comment period, when prompted, please unmute yourself and say your name to register. Speakers must be registered in order to be recognized by the chair. If you are unable to attend the meeting remotely, please submit written comments to the Community Police Commission at ocpc@seattle.gov. The Seattle Community Police Commission acknowledges that we are on the traditional land of the Coast Salish people, including the Muckleshoot, Suquamish, and Duwamish people, past and present. With humility, we recognize how much we benefit from living on their land and water. The Seattle Community Police Commission honors and lifts up these tribes. We hope that this acknowledgement will encourage authentic relationships with urban Native people and all Coast Salish tribes. I will turn the meeting back over to the chairs and/or designees.
Recording in progress.
Great. Thank you, Brandy. So welcome again, everyone. While we're in this kind of interim period of co-chairs, and Reverend Walden and I continuing to serve in the interim role, we've asked folks to help with facilitation. So we're going to be mixing up facilitation at some of these meetings while we're in this interim period. And Reverend Hunter and Austin Field, two of our commissioners, have graciously agreed to facilitate today's meeting. And so I will, we'll be, obviously Reverend Hunter, Reverend Walden and I will be here at this meeting and help out as necessary and participate, but we can turn it over to Austin and Reverend Hunter to facilitate today's meeting. I don't know if this is just my screen, but I'm not seeing, is Austin on the call this morning? Yeah, I don't think I'm seeing him.
Well,
Reverend Hunter.
Yeah, he sent an email. I think he had an unexpected emergency, and so
okay,
that's what I thought. And so maybe you might be able to lead the first part of that, the part that Austin was going to lead.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. Great. Let me just make sure I have the agenda pulled up. Perfect. So the first thing on the agenda is to take attendance, and just give me 1 second. I also need to pull up the attendance document. Great. Suzette?
Present.
Thank you, Suzette. Esther, I don't think is going to be here. Reverend Walden. I see you.
Present.
Thank you. Welcome. I don't see Asha on the call. Reverend Hunter.
Present.
Thank you. Tasha.
I'm present. Sorry, I have no voice, but I'm present.
Thanks, Tasha. Alina.
I am present. Just FYI, I have to present at a King County council meeting this morning from 10 to 10:30, but then I'll hop back on.
Thank you, Alina. Catherine. Okay, I don't see Catherine. I'm here, present. Legea. Not seeing Legea. Scott Bachler's on leave. Prachi. Good morning, Prachi. Thank you. Looks like Austin said he had something come up. He's not going to be here. Officer Mullins.
Officer Mullins is present.
Thank you, Officer Mullins. Erica Newman.
Present.
Thank you. And then Joseph Saya.
I'm here.
Thanks, Joseph. Great. That wraps up our attendance section. And now we'll move on to reviewing and approving minutes from the January 19 meeting. And can I get a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting?
I will move to accept the minutes from our last meeting.
Thank you, Reverend Hunter. Is there a second?
This is Prachi. I'll second.
Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Our January 19 minutes are approved. Would someone like to make a motion to approve today's agenda?
I move to
And/or-
approve the agenda for today.
Perfect. Thank you, Reverend Hunter.
I thought-
Is there a second?
Well, just a moment. I think that we wanted to. I thought that the director had sent out the report from yesterday, but I didn't see it attached to the agenda. So was that supposed to go out yesterday about the report that came out from OPA, so we could add it to the agenda today?
I suggested that you all make an amendment to the agenda to discuss
Right.
this morning. Yes, ma'am.
I didn't see it though. I didn't see it. I didn't see the document. So did you? I didn't get it. So maybe other commissioners got it. I didn't get the document.
Yes, it was sent with the email. It was attached to it. Let me go back and verify.
Yeah, I didn't see it there. So anyway, well, may I make I make a friendly amendment to the to your amendment to just to amend the agenda to look at the report that the OPA had sent out yesterday.
I accept that friendly amendment.
Great. Is there a second to the motion as amended?
I'll second that motion. I think I can second the motion that I amend. I believe I can. If not, I stand corrected, but I believe I can. So I'll second
If
it.
not, I'll second it for you.
Okay, Suzette will second it. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you all. Is all in favor of approving the agenda as amended?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. We have approved our agenda in minutes.
And where will we put that on the agenda?
It's a good question. Let's see.
Put it towards I would put it a little bit closer towards the bottom, Reverend Hunter. Once we get to like new business, I'm gonna get everything sent around everybody. It wasn't attached. That was a mishap on my part.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess Brandy's suggesting the new CPC business section, which is from 10:30 to 10:50 in that section.
Okay, thank
That
you.
works for me. And thank you for the question, Reverend Hunter. Action items to review. I don't think that there are any action items to review. Brandy or Reverend Hunter or Reverend Walden can correct me if I'm wrong on that. And so if not, I think we can move into public comment. Emily, would you be so kind as to start public comment?
Yes, of course. Before I go to our written public comment, is there anybody who'd like to register by voice? Okay, so we have one person registered for public comment, and that is Dr. Howard Gale. Give me just one sec. Hi, Dr. Gale, can you talk?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Let me pull up the public comment timer and we'll be good to go. Okay, Dr. Gale, whenever you're ready.
Good morning. Sam Toshiro Smith, Shun Ma, Leighton Taylor, Charlena Lyles, Danny Rodriguez, Ryan Smith, Terry Caver, Derek Hayden, and the person still unnamed killed by the SPD on January 5th. These are the 9 people killed by the SPD in the last 6 years and unaccounted for in the crisis intervention data presented to the community by the monitor. Erased from life, denied an independent investigation, homicides covered up by a failed accountability system, and now Seattle has further rendered their tragedies invisible by manipulating numbers. Yesterday, the OPA released its report on SPD's murder of Derek Hayden last year. Once more, a heartless police accountability system that has police policing police determines that a cop murdering someone only requires a 1 to 3 day timeout. Andrew Myerberg has, in this case, as he did with the SPD murder of Terry Caver, engaged in absurd legal and philosophical contortions to separate out an officer's failure to de-escalate from the act of killing, as if killing a pedestrian with your car gets you a simple traffic ticket for just running the red light. As with the Terry Caver murder, SPD's FIT had already determined that officers acted out of policy, so Myerberg only needed to affirm that. Stated another way, the SPD brass gave Myerberg the good to go on finding that officers violated policy. Police, policing, police. Since John T. Williams was murdered by the SPD, there are now 15 SPD killings of people with edged or no weapons, with our accountability system determining 13 to be lawful and proper, and 2 requiring just a timeout for the officers who did the killing. This entire accountability system has ensured this will happen every year in the future as it has in the past. As surely as the SPD created and supported a system that denied Derek Hayden life, the OPA and the CPC created and supported a system that have denied him, his family, and his friends justice. Being a facade for justice is itself an injustice. It ain't complicated. Police in the UK don't execute folks with knives.
Thank you, Dr. Gale. Okay, and that does conclude public comment.
Thank you, Dr. Gill and Emily. Is there anyone that would like to contribute or comment on the public comment that we just heard? Any responses? Yeah, Mr. Mullen.
I just wish that Dr. Gale would take a edged weapon class from our academy. Maybe he would have a different perspective. That's all. Could you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we can hear you. Thanks, Officer Mullins. I guess I'll also just add this is an area of concern for us as well. This is we've discussed and we're continuing to discuss crisis intervention in the behavioral health work group, and are actively looking at how officers respond to situations of crisis that may involve knives. We recently have tried to draw attention to this issue. We wrote an op-ed on SPD's response to crisis situations and are looking to get that out. The focus of the message is about how mental health crisis in Seattle is too often results in force and results in death of our community members, and how being in mental health crisis should not be a death sentence. And so I just want to acknowledge Dr. Gale's comments and say that we share the concern. Go ahead, Reverend Walden.
And also the other thing too is that some of us went to a demonstration of the Ebola wrap that the SPD is moving toward using, that would actually give the person an opportunity to be taken a harder view with being apprehended another way, not apprehended, but be able to be de-escalated another way so that the individual would not be harmed. So they are moving, and in all of these cases, we acknowledge that the police, that the people did lose their lives, but also one of the things that has happened that Dr. Gale does not talk about is the fact that out of all the calls that we've had on CIT, most of the calls have ended with people not being killed. And Dr. Gale does not mention the fact that all the other ones who actually go to Harborview and actually go up there, it's a revolving door that way because there's not enough beds, it's not enough follow through, and so a lot of our citizens who are having, our neighbors who are having mental ill crisis is back in the crisis situation, and no person in a crisis should be killed. That's why mothers worked many years ago to be able to have a crisis intervention and to bring it from Portland here, because we felt that anyone who's having a mental ill crisis should have humane treatment and be treated in such a way. That was before Mr. Gale got actively involved in police accountability issues. Thank you.
And the next section of our agenda is on crisis intervention. It's on the monitor's preliminary assessment of crisis intervention. So, perhaps we can kind of continue this discussion into that section, which is on this same topic. So, Brandy, I'll turn it over to you to introduce this topic. No, Brandy, I don't know if you heard me. So I was transitioning to the next section. I just have in my notes to turn it over to you for the crisis intervention section.
Thanks, Douglas. I was
sorry
about that. No worries. Yes, everybody, this morning we had sent around with the supplemental materials the first section of the monitor's preliminary assessment, the crisis intervention. We had the meeting back in January. We kicked off in December with Spd coming and actually doing a presentation on crisis intervention, and then having the monitor come out on January the 8th, I believe was the date. We're actually going to go over some of the notes and feedback that we provided to this particular section. And I'll have the policy staff step in to go over that material with you all, so we can actually have a conversation and vote about the feedback that we're going to be providing back to the monitor.
Good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here with you this morning. Yes, we are going to dive into the policy team. Namely, Nia and Evan took a good job looking at, it's a short document, it's about 18 pages, taking a look at it and just flagging some issues that we're seeing potentially, not really red flags per se, but more like questions, comments, suggestions that we have that they're hoping the monitoring team can speak to or continue to conduct throughout the methodology as they continue their work. But before we do that, because Evan is speaking this morning, I'm going to do the top half, he's going to do the bottom half of this report and going through it. Evan Lee is the newest member of our team. We did not have an opportunity in our last meeting to make an introduction. And so I don't want him to start speaking. We're like, who is this guy on board? He's our amazing data guy, but I want to give him just a minute to introduce himself. He's new to staff, and then we'll start looking at the document. Evan?
Yeah, thanks, Shailene. Happy to be here. Just a quick background, I graduated last year from the Evans School of Public Policy and Governance for a master's, and I was a data analyst at a UW Research Institute previously. Just kind of excited to be here, kind of happy to help CPC and all our stakeholders, and kind of just want to recognize that I did just join this kind of work recently, and I've only been here for a few weeks, so definitely have a lot to learn, but excited to be here.
Great, thank you so much, Evan. So everyone, you'll see Evan a lot more in the future. Again, he's our data and policy evaluations advisor. So he is tasked with continuing to run our dashboards, and then any data we receive will run through his position. And he's starting to innovate and think about the ways that we can lean more into the data space and how we can produce that for the public and for you all. So you'll be seeing more of him. But right now I have put him to so much work. So he's doing a lot of great work. So okay, let's turn it over to our document here that we started. What I'm going to do is share my screen for you all, and we'll do a walkthrough. All right, let me know when everyone can see this on your screen. You can see it? Okay, perfect. Okay, so what we're going to do is, I know you all received this yesterday morning, So I'm going to run with the assumption that you have perused it, read it in depth, or made notes, some variation in between that spectrum. So I'm not going to do, Evan and I are not going to do this in-depth conversation about it. And the monitor did come to the last community engagement meeting to speak on this. I'm really going to give, Evan and I will just do like super high level overview of the section. So really we can give you the context to the comments and suggestions that were made by staff. Once we have walked this document, and if everyone is in agreement with the edits and suggestions made, and the ones that you might make throughout this time, those items will be dropped into one of our beautiful formatted charts and sent over to the monitor team. So that's kind of next steps after that. So let's get started. When we shared this initially, there was some thought, and you'll see it to the bottom, and I put it up here so I can just say it from the top, that there's some data collection here, mainly from SPD. And so there is a general feedback for the monitoring team that, we should be looking at other data sources, community, CBOs, looking to other organizations that also collect this data, because they should also be part of the metrics that are used to determine whether or not SPD is actually in compliance with their policies and implementation in any reforms that they have made. So I put that right here on the top. And that, I think that was suggested by Austin, which was a good point. So right here on the top, just for the framework as we move forward, we think there just, generally speaking, needs to be more here. So the beginning of the introduction is just to talk about what this assessment is for, that they're going to be doing 3. The crisis intervention is one of 3. And this is just making that first initial preliminary assessment on how the department is doing with the reforms that they were ascribed by the consent decree and the previous monitoring team, where they thought they were. They did meet with us on January 11th at the community engagement meeting that evening and did a presentation. It was heavily attended by community and other agencies, and there was a really good conversation that ensued. So I hope you were all present there to see that. One of the first comments that we made on staff is that the monitoring team is going to make the feedback from the community available to us. We also take notes, but we want to make sure that we're all on the same page with what we all heard, that sometimes that can go a little bit of a rise. So we want to make sure that that is actually what's happening. And just the raw feedback, and raw feedback meaning unedited, uncensored, what people were commenting, emailing what they said, just making sure we receive that. Quick table of contents. And now we're dropping into the key context and findings. Here, this is mostly just a wrap up of the assessments that were done in 2016 and then 2018 confirmation by the previous monitoring team and what they found during that time. It's just a list of findings and facts of here's what occurred. The question here that we have is right here in bullet point 3, that it would be good to know in terms of framing how types of force are used, not just within how they discuss here within crisis contacts, but also how they're used with the general population, just with other calls of service. That would be a helpful reference. And Nia has mentioned this here and mentions again below in her second point, but also that the types that they're seeing here, higher levels, even though it's a smaller percentage, some of these are also lives that have been lost at the hands of SPD. And then another comment kind of feels like some of these bullet points, it's almost a glossing over of the lives that were lost. So this was similar feedback that I heard during our community engagement event to the monitoring team, is that we need to take care, not just the partners, but the monitoring team care that we are not just putting numbers here, that we are also talking about these numbers represent people. And when we're talking about people who have lost their lives, who were killed at the hands of Seattle Police Department, that we are naming that and not just saying it's this particular percentage. That is important, and that was really felt by community. And so as a CPC, I think it's a point that we need to advocate on their behalf as well and stand behind them in that. This is trauma that people experience. And then, of course, down here talking more about the percentages that were given, questions about, they need to talk about the pandemic. Was there a decrease, if they can see any causal link between that and the pandemic, or at least calling that out, that this could be a potential variable as to why this number has gone down, and not necessarily any positive or negative changes that have been made by the department. Here, just background consent decree requirements. A lot of this you all know. What the DOJ found when that initially went through, that SPD officers are using unnecessary or excessive force. And this is seen especially in encounters with persons that are experiencing mental illness or under the influence of alcohol or drugs. And a lot of that was, there was not at the time a really formed and concrete centralized CIT team. Yep, I said team twice, CIT unit. And so a call out there. But a lot of this is stuff that you already all know. This is from the consent decree. This is just background information. Didn't really have a lot of any things that we needed to flag here within that report. Here in this section, they talk about progress to date in previous assessments. This is in 2016, discussing that the monitoring team saw that, SPD was in compliance. Then later on, they talk about a 2018 review of those programs and reforms, and that they were still at that time on target. And so this is what the monitoring team found in order to see that there has been a green check for they have done everything they needed to do according to what was mandated within the consent decree. And so it's just a bulleted list here for the department and for everyone for you to review and take a look at. Again, background. Here's where we kind of had the next assessment that Nia pointed out, and we had a conversation that they talk about that there's these assessments. So there were assessments that were made in 2016, but there were additional assessments that were done by the monitoring team, by SPD. And so it's not clear if the assessments that were completed by the monitoring team, if they were always done that way, if that was always the pattern and practice with the monitoring team working with SPD or something new. So again, as a CPC, we read these to ensure that the reader, being the audience, being the community, will be able to follow along, that they will understand and have all the context and background they would need in order to have an informed opinion after reading an assessment from the monitoring team. That should always be the goal from any agency, regardless of who's writing it. So just a call out for them of explain what you mean. Then we go on to their SPD's recent approach, so current times right now, just how they are approaching, continuing to go through with the monitoring team, how they're going into their crisis intervention, updates to their policies, how they're engaging that, the data that is being used for the assessments, where it's coming from. If you read through this, you notice there's two nice little hyperlinks here to their crisis intervention dashboard available on the website, and also open data, which Evan's going to speak to that a little bit later on, potentially some issues there. So I will leave that for him. And then I believe we're going to go right into findings. So this is where we are right now, current day, with the monitoring team, finding that they're insignificant. They receive a significant and respond to a significant number of crisis events. And that a small, these events represent a small percentage of events that SPD is dispatched to. Again, with the community in mind, just a note here that we understand what communications dispatch officers, we still think they should be writing to community with the assumption that at least one person in the entire Seattle community might not be informed to the language or the background. So we want to make sure that they're adding that in a footnote or here. We understand this is the communication center, but it's a little bit vague. Just make sure that they know what communication center is. And I think a footnote of what they actually do so people understand that. So we have that here. Then there's conversation about capacity to respond to crises. So just more findings from the monitoring team. Again, I'm sure you all read through this. And just that they essentially, most of the section talks about they have officers that have gone through their enhanced 40-hour training. So many officers on the force, I think it's at 63% of their force has gone through the training, and then most officers have gone through the fundamental, it's like an 8-hour training. And so within this findings, what they're seeing is that even if an officer is dispatched to crisis intervention. If they are not crisis intervention trained, it's most likely than not that the officers that do respond have at least a foundational training on crisis intervention, so they would not be able to handle, I guess, what they believe is like the minimal of someone experiencing crisis care. The last part we have here, they speak to refresher trainings and trainings that SPD continues to provide basic training, including non-CIT certified personnel. They talk about the training that happened in 2014 and then subsequent refresher trainings. What we're not hearing, and I didn't hear much of that either the other evening from the monitoring team, is what is encapsulating these refresher trainings and how often they occur. So would like some more on that. 2014 was, about 8 years ago. So I think it's appropriate for us to know almost a decade later what's going on with those refresher trainings, how often they happen, who takes them. That is important when they have findings here. That was finding 1. There are 5 more, I believe, but we're going to go a little bit deeper into the data that they use. And so I'm going to turn this over to Evan, and he'll walk through the other portions of this report. And then after that, we can swing back around and go to like questions, comments, and then receive more of your feedback and questions you might have for the monitoring team that we can send up to them. And then you can go ahead and take over. Do you want to share your screen? You want me to leave this up and I can scroll for you?
Do you mind just keep scrolling, Shailene? I'll give you a heads up if
not a problem.
More. Yeah.
Sure.
So I just want to start off that kind of at the very top here with individual with multiple crises contacts of SPD. Kind of like what Shailene mentioned earlier, there are 2 data sets. You have the open data set, which I believe just gives specific contact information. Then you have the mental health crisis data sets. But I think something that's kind of interesting is that for the mental health crisis data sets, there's only an indicator of force used in there and not the specific level of force used. So that's, I think, a point that needs to be addressed, since I think SPD in this report, there's a lot of talk about open data, but one of the key parts of which is the type of force used isn't available or might have been not included unintentionally. I think this next comment here is just some minor wording edits. Do you mind scrolling down a bit, Jane? To the number of SPD crisis contacts. Yep, right here. Yeah, so on this table here, it appears to show how many contacts SPD had in crisis and how many times the same individual was contacted. For example, in the 1 column, that indicates this individual was contacted once, and 2 would indicate twice, 3 to 4, etc. And I think what's interesting with this data, and I think maybe more needs to be spoken about this, is if you look from the 5 to 6 to the 16 plus range, there's been a pretty sharp increase in most of these in the number of times these individuals have been contacted or reached. So this kind of shows that there are a lot of repeat contacts of the same individual. And this might speak to what Harry Walton spoke to previously, where kind of people in mental health crises might be getting put in situations where they're being put back out on the street, which leads to these increased repeat incidents. Let's see, what's next? Yeah, and then I guess one of my other questions was in the specific section where it talks about demographics of crisis contacts, just asking, do we have information on how many of these professionals attended these crisis contacts other than the officers involved, and are there like certain protocol? And I'm assuming there is, but maybe a little bit more clarity on that in this report. And then if we just keep going down, I think overall in these sections, what I was happy to see was previously in 2019 or previous years, which I actually don't know, SPD classified a lot of demographic information was missing, to be frank, from the reports. But it seems like this year, there was a really strong push to classify this information and make it clear. Yeah, kind of same feedback as above. That keeps going down. Yeah, and lastly here, I think this might be my last comment, is I think this report really focuses on year-to-year change, but it would be good to see how this has changed on a longer time scales perspective. For example, from 2016 to 2017, 2017 to 2018, and from 2018 to 2019. And kind of related to what I mentioned above, I do understand that a lot of new data collection methods are being used, and this can make comparing to previous years a little more difficult, but I still think it's important to see a longer historic time scale trend, since comparing year to year, as I think maybe Nia mentioned about one of her comments, that sometimes a pandemic or there can be other factors that kind of influence year to year changes. And yeah, I think that's kind of it.
Thank you, Evan and Shailene. Shailene, did you have anything else, or you're handing it back to me now?
Okay, sorry, I was, let me start my video. It's so weird to share screen and look at things. I promise you, I'm a millennial, so this means we don't always do the video. I'm so sorry. No, that was it. I just wanted to scroll through so everyone could see the end of the document. It is about 18 pages. So if you haven't had an opportunity to read it and you didn't have an opportunity to attend the community engagement meeting, Executive Director Grant has sent that around. Please take a look at it. We plan to take all of the comments that we have with that document they've outlined. We are going to drop it into one of our beautiful charts and send it up to the monitoring team. If there's any additional feedback, thoughts, or questions that you all have now, we can take them here in this moment. We can also receive them via email and also send those up. We can answer questions the best we can. We're not the monitoring team, so I can't speak to the thought behind it, the methodology used, why they crafted certain things. So I think it's best that we send those questions up and allow them to speak to them and come back and have that conversation. Reverend Walden, hi.
Hi, thank you so much. Great report. I didn't receive the report at all. I mean, I didn't see it in my packet. I just sent another email. I mean, I just sent another one. A text,
I think it was in the email that Emily sent yesterday morning with the agenda. It's attached there, but what I can do is I can send it separately directly to you. So it's at the top of your inbox. Not a problem. Yeah. Does anyone else want that? I can send that out again. If it's not, if anyone else doesn't have it, please let me know and we can recirculate that. Not a problem.
Is the one that was sent around, does it have the markings in there? Just so
yes, the one we sent around is the product from staff, so you all could see our comments. It's in there just like that. You're welcome. Okay, well, I will turn it back over. Oh, I'm sorry, Officer Mullins.
In the readings, there was a question about how many times that mental health professionals showed up to the scene of calls for mental health, which included police officers. So I can answer that in the fact that we don't see many mental health professionals. Unless we go to some of the homes where the mental health professionals work and where the patients live. The apartment complexes is what I'm talking about. So we heard, or we surmised that we would be getting called second if there was a mental health call, that the mental health professionals that are unarmed would be taking care of most of the mental health problems that were occurring, and we find out that we're going to mental health calls even more. And even if mental health professionals do go to these calls initially, that we're generally getting called to those calls anyway.
Right.
Just a little comment, just painting the picture so that people understand what's really going on.
Thank you, Officer Mullins. That's valuable information for us to have, to see what is written in policy, but then also how it happens in like implementation, like on the ground, what's actually going on. So always welcome your insight. Thank you so much. Anyone else?
Yeah, I was going to actually make a kind of a similar comment. I think it would be helpful in this report to include information about, at least discussion, if the information is not available, discussion about alternative responders and their role in these calls. and, to include like lead or health one. I mean, I understand maybe health one wasn't like quite up and running. It might be even still being formed. I'm not exactly sure what the status of it is, but how many of these crisis calls involve some sort of alternative responder, and if it's insignificant, including discussion about particular health one and how it could be integrated with some of these calls in the future, and problematizing it along the lines of what Officer Mullins is saying too. I mean, if there are these alternative responders, but they're not going to the calls on their own, SPD is still the kind of primary responder. I think that discussion is important. So yeah, this is an important topic about how folks who are in crisis are receiving services and getting help, and what kind of response they're receiving. So I wonder, do other folks have comments on this report, other kind of notes or questions that should be added before we take a vote? I saw Reverend Walden's hand.
Thank you. I just wanted to add on to what Officer Mullen is saying, because even on the state level, they're realizing that the social workers will not go on a lot of the calls without an escort from police. So that's a real pushback from social workers and people who actually working directly with the people who have in crisis. I mean, I've also out in Burien and other places, they've had some serious incidents, and so I mean that's a place that's really that's troublesome. As trying to fix the system, did not understand that social workers actually was really not keen on that idea of them going into places without an escort or backup from SPD, and also fire department, fire also. So anyway, those are just things that when we separated, sometimes that piece wasn't fully discussed. But all in all, I think we're just headed in the right direction with what you presented, myself, with the add-ons. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Reverend Walden. And I think this is good setting for you all to have a conversation later on about the OPA case that came out yesterday. And I think that was, this report, when it was written and the years that they're looking at, I think there's interesting conversation to be said about how these reports need to be potentially updated, how methodology can be changed as cases arise. And so that we're taking the whole context into order, and instead of just kind of stopping within 2020 from there and taking a look. And I think that's up for CPC to kind of weigh in on that here as commissioners of what should be the scope when they are taking a look at this, and how we can lean further into those spaces and provide that feedback, and open up spaces for community to provide that feedback like we do in our community engagement events. That's one of them. But I can appreciate how you are talking about the alternative response. I think that's really interesting, and another potential gap that is here in this report and what can be looked into. And if not there, is that something that we step into that space? Can we look at that? Do we partner with OIG? How does that look? So thank you for that. We will add that feedback to ours as well. Is there any other questions? And we're including questions in this as well. So if there's questions you have, which Douglas, you gave us some good material, any questions or other suggestions you have, happy to receive those, or also by the end of the day today via email. We're trying to put this together pretty soon and send it up. Is there anyone else? If not, I'll turn it back over to Douglas, to Chair Wagoner. Officer Mullins.
Just a comment and maybe a suggestion, or maybe a thought process we need to start moving towards. And that is, and I want people to understand, this is nothing against mental health workers. I appreciate what they do. I appreciate their talents. We need them, and I respect them and appreciate them. But a lot of times they can't do their job with what's going on with the call and what's going on with the patient. If there's violence being enacted, or if there's something going on that makes it impossible for the mental health people to do their jobs, I feel like when you initially contact some of the patients in some of these incidents, everything isn't conveyed on radio or conveyed in communication what's going on with that person at that time. So when the mental health professionals show up, they find quite a different situation going on, which needs or requires police to be there. What I would like to see is that the mental health professionals be embedded with the police officers, so that in each squad, a mental health, one or two mental health professionals can respond to calls with officers to be able to make an assessment about whether mental health people need to go in and make the contact, or whether police officers need to go in and make the contact first. That would seem to be the safest way to handle a lot of these things, because a lot of these calls are getting peeled over to us if there are mental health professionals there first, if they arrive on the scene first and find out that it's a situation in which police need to handle, or at least police need to get there to calm the situation down. And then they can do their jobs, which is a lot of times what happens. But unfortunately, because of numbers, because of COVID, because of a lot of things, we're not seeing mental health professionals showing up to our calls or taking calls or doing anything. We're doing the same number of mental health calls or more. So maybe that's an idea that we might want to think about, is embedding the mental health professionals with police officers in their squads, so that they can respond to these calls real time with police officers, and make an assessment on the scene whether the mental health professionals, whether that's a call for mental health professionals or whether it's a call for police officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Mullins. I think that's a conversation that we've had previously here on the CPC about how can mental health professionals, or professionals generally, we were talking about reallocating resources. That conversation that came out of defund, a reallocation of what should officers be responding to. And that was one of the remedies that people were discussing, is how they can further embed folks with these response teams. So that's really interesting. So the three things I've heard that I was going to include with the comments that we all made was seeing if, suggestion of should they be looking at as a compliance team. They might not be able to, but the mental health professionals embedded within each unit, how alternative responders are incorporated when they are called, how can they be involved in crisis calls, how could they be connected in the future, specifically with their ability to do their work when there's violence involved with the call. So we have those pieces of feedback both from Douglas and from Officer Mullins that we will include in our feedback chart and put that together. And Douglas, I'll turn it back over to you. I'm not sure if all of this needs or requires a vote from the commission on the feedback that we'll be sending. So I'll send it back over to leadership team to make those determinations. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate you today. And every day, but today especially.
Thank you, Shailene. It looks like Suzette also had their hand up at one point too, you all.
I'm sorry, Suzette, I did not see that. My apologies.
Yeah, I'm seeing that too. So I'm seeing Suzette and Legea are in the attendees column. I don't know. I think they might need to be re-promoted to panelists.
Yeah, we're updating.
There we go.
Thanks,
fantastic.
Thank you. I was just trying to get somebody's attention that I wasn't as a panelist anymore. And so I was like, I need to be brought back in. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzette.
Reverend Hunter, I think at one point you had your, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I didn't have a question. Oh, well, Shailene answered it. I wanted to know how soon they needed to feed the feedback and what was the next steps for this document. And she
Yeah,
answered.
we're hoping to receive most of the feedback either in this conversation right now. If you want to think throughout the day, if you can get them later on this evening, we'll see them top of the morning. And then we can put that together. Hopefully the end of the week, we'd like to send this out. I'll refer to Brandy back on the timeline, but I know she wanted to get this out pretty quick. So I don't want to, that's still press to folks if they want to take time to read it. Maybe there can be an adjustment. And I think if people say, hey, I need an extra day or so right now, then that lets us know where our timeline is so we can stay on track or adjust as needed. So that would be helpful for us. I'll just be transparent about it. I just need to know.
We're meeting with the monitor on Friday just to prep for the next series of the community engagement sessions for stop and detention since it's coming up. So I would like for us to, if we have anything that we want to provide in that particular meeting, if you all could get that back to us so staff, we can have it ready by Friday to send to the monitor, if that makes sense. So this evening, no later than the close of, actually midday tomorrow, so we can get it incorporated and we can get it sent to the monitor.
Suzette? I'm seeing a hand.
Yeah. So you guys said that the copy that we were supposed to have was supposed to have what staff's with staff's information on it, because the only thing that I have is just the report and that's it. So I don't know if there was a different copy that was sent out or what, but I'm looking at it right now and
You are? Okay. I can send that around again because I have the original itself and it's possible that might have just been a mix up on my end. Apologies for that, everyone. And I said that's what you got and you didn't. Let me fix that myself since this was probably my little hiccup. I will send this back around what I just showed you on screen during the presentation. I will send this back around to the commissioner listserv. Give me just about 2 to 3 minutes and we'll send it back around so you'll have it. Apologies for that.
Not a problem.
Great. My gut feeling is that we don't need to vote on this. I mean, it's not so much a position as it is like just comments and kind of questions on it. And especially because folks are going to be potentially sending in more comments and questions in the next day or so. Happy to have someone else have a different opinion about that, but that's just kind of my thought in this moment.
So are we sending anything officially, or is it we just adding, we're just commenting on it? I mean, we're just commenting on their report. It's what I'm trying to, so we will be commenting on it. Will it be official? Will it be public? I mean, if it's going to be public, then we do need to take a position on it, or make sure that we're right, that the letter, that it's all okay. I mean, that we're all in agreement with it, and give them the leeway to add any of the other comments that might come in. But we're in agreement with the fact that we agree on this work, and that we're in agreement with the presentation, the way it's been presented. So we would just need to do that. I mean, we can do a consensus on it, that we all agree that this is what's a step in the right direction, and we agree with the policy team, because that's what they're there for. They're there to help us be able to see the way and to pick up what we missed and what we didn't see with our normal eyes, because their eyes are they got the trained eyes to be able to pick up all the nuances. So yeah, just consensus.
And so we're just voting on the policy staff comments, right? And the additional comments that were shared today. We're not like voting on the report itself to like endorse the report, right? I'm just trying to
No. What you said was correct.
Okay, cool. Okay. Okay. So is there a motion to approve the comments that have been and feedback and edits that have been shared today on this report? And then we can just do a consensus vote.
I'll make a motion to approve just what you said. The work that has been done in the comments to be added. Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Okay, great.
I'll second it. I'll second.
Thanks. Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Yeah. Good work.
And any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, great. We will shoot those over. And yeah, I also would like to thank the policy team for their hard work.
Good work.
Okay.
Thank you all so much.
I will, I think at this point, turn things over to Reverend Hunter for the second half of the meeting.
Thanks, Douglas. And I too want to thank the policy team for their hard work. Thank you. Now we're going to move into some department updates. And so if there is someone here from the city council to give an update, and I think I saw Newell.
Thank you, Reverend Hunter. Yes. The update I have is in January, there were a couple meetings of the Public Safety and Human Services Committee. On the 11th, the committee heard the OPA's findings on the ruse on June 8th, 2020. On the 25th, Consent Decree Monitor Offaly came and briefed the committee on an update on his work on consent decree, and also mentioned the outreach meetings a bit. The other item heard was the Inspector General's discipline audit. The council is working on its 2022 work plan, and thank you to Executive Director Grant for taking our communication about that. We, in response also to the OPA report that came out, Councilor Herbold has been in touch with the chief's office about that, and has been in touch with the chief previously about that, and heard about some of the training that has been going on. And I think they are going to be providing an additional update to her about that coming up soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there someone here from the mayor's office to give an update? Okay. How about someone from the monitoring team? I think I saw Ron here a bit earlier. From the monitoring team? Okay, maybe we'll come back around. How about from the DOJ?
Yeah, hey, good morning. Just continuing to work through the assessments. I was very interested to hear the crisis intervention feedback that the CPC is going to provide. And then the department's just looking forward to the upcoming community engagement meeting on stops and detentions. So.
Okay. Thank you so much. Is there someone here from SPD to give an update?
Good morning, all. Thank you for this discussion here today. There's been some issues raised here that I think are actually very interesting. Evan, it's a pleasure to meet you. Some of your data points we've already started discussing here based on what you said today. Particularly interested in seeing whether we can break out our data by type of force in the mental health dashboard, as you suggested. I think that's a very good idea, and we're looking into that already. We have been engaging with the monitor and CPC and OIG on the next assessment report that's coming out on stops and detentions. We look forward to discussing that with you in the community next Tuesday night. We also are looking forward to presenting to members of the accountability partners later today on our edged weapon training and use of less lethal tools to help get better understanding and facilitate that communication. But thank you very much, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. And now we'll move to the update from the Office of the Inspector General, and I see Inspector General Judges Square. There she is.
Good morning. Hi, everybody. I just want to clarify, Shailene, you had mentioned sending out the crisis report with CPC's community comments, that you're sending that out to all of us? So I'm very interested in seeing it.
I
So
sent that out
hopefully
to the
that's
commission, and it's not necessarily community comments, it's comments from staff as we read through it as the policy team and
Yeah.
gave our feedback. But that went out to the commissioners only.
okay. So it's not. I would be very interested in seeing that if you were willing to share it. But I'll move on. Looking forward, as Brian Maxey mentioned, to the edge weapons discussion today with stakeholders. As Newell mentioned, my office did a presentation about the discipline audit in committee last week, and we have provided those materials at Director Grant's request to the commissioners, the PowerPoint, and a link to the presentation, and looking forward to opportunities to come and discuss that with the commissioners once you folks have had a chance to take a look at it. And if you have any questions or want to discuss. We are in final production of the Wave 2 Sentinel event report, which should be coming out in the next couple of weeks. We're just trying to make sure that we've captured all of the discussions appropriately, and that the report is accessible and understandable to folks before we push it out. We have a meeting set up with CPC to discuss ruses and the use of deception by SPD coming up in the next couple of weeks. So looking forward to that. And we had done a report about SPD's, it was in response to a complaint about SPD officers not wearing masks during COVID. And so that report should be coming out very soon as well. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Ron, we'll swing back around to you for the monitoring team report.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, Reverend Hunter.
Hi there.
My report is pretty much the same as at our last meeting. We are continuing to work on the assessments and preparation for the next community engagement session on February 8th. Other than that, with that in my casework, I've had my hands full. I think the monitor team has also. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we'll move into the CPC updates and reports. And is there an update from the co-chairs?
No updates.
No, okay. How about our executive director, Grant?
Thank you, Reverend Hunter. I have several updates. We're in the process of myself and Felicia going over PDR reviews so we can update them, which is equivalent to a job description within the city, to expand her community engagement team. Working on the final review of the draft of the strategic plan. There were a few final questions from our consultants and a few edits, basically entering in the parameters, the ordinance, accountability legislation, the things that we are mandated and required to do. So I am in the process of working on and reviewing that information so I can get that back to them so they can finalize it and send a final report of it. Pulling reappointment and appointment preparation packets. We have several commissioners, not several, we have about 3 commissioners that terms ended in December, and I've reached out to them. There's one person that has asked not to be reappointed, and there are 2 that have recommitted. So I'll be sending around information to gather from them to do their reappointment packet. And then in efforts of doing some recruitment for the vacant seats that we do have amongst the commission, there is a new commissioner that will be coming hopefully before council for a new appointment to the commission. This is a gentleman that was recommended by Colleen Echohawk. I had the opportunity to meet with them and talk with them, and would be really excited about them joining the commission. So there'll be more details to come around that. Shailene beat me to the punch. We were going to actually introduce Evan at our last meeting, but we ended up running out of time. So I just want to welcome Evan to our team again. He's been a great asset, and I hope you all have an opportunity to get to know him and you get to see some of the incredible work he's already laid out in front of you all this morning. Seattle IT, just a reminder, they have launched a new password self-service tool citywide to help assist with some of the problems that we were all having with changing our passwords so frequently. You all should have received emails from the city about that. If anybody needs any assistance on how to set up that toolbox, let us know so we can help you get that going. For those of you that are maybe locked out of your email account, please let me know. I just received notification from a commissioner yesterday evening that they no longer had access. So please keep informing me and Emily of those situations so we can make sure that you're getting updated meeting materials and information that's going out from staff. Let's see. Few other updates are our new office space. There has been tremendous efforts made with tiles, painting, furniture has come in. There is another walkthrough that's scheduled for me in the morning, and then there will be an additional one when there's time for the actual move from the space that we're currently in to the new space. So I will keep you all posted about that. But so far the process with the city has been really helpful. So hopefully we will, I would say probably the top of March, have everything sorted, set up, and situated for the new office space, which is really, honestly, it's directly down the hall from the space that we currently reside in. Staff is also working on our 2022 work plan. We've began looking over items that we were really excited about last year that we did not have an opportunity to embark on. So there are things that we're going to pick up from last year, and then we're incorporating some new things that we're looking forward to doing. Once we have a really good draft of what that's going to look like, the breakout will be, obviously operational items, governance items, policy, community engagement, things that the ED will be tasked to do in combination with commissioners. We will share that draft with you all so you're able to provide input as well and just see kind of the direction that we're going in. And seat availability, I just want everybody to be aware of the number of seats that are open and the strategy and plan for recruiting folks. We have 3 open seats for the mayor, and then we have 2 open seats for city council. There's only 1 CPC seat, and after I complete the appointment packet, that seat will no longer be available. So the 2 other appointing authorities will hopefully, I've met with council, still trying to get something set up with the new administration within the mayor's office. It is pending still. I'm sure they have a lot that they're trying to get to. So giving them some grace, but as soon as that is set up, we will have someone that will be frequenting these meetings to give us updates, and then we can work with them around commissioner recruitment. That concludes all of my updates for now. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question about the commission appointment, the CPC commissioner. Do we as a commission vote on that, or is that staff appointed?
To my understanding, it's not a vote. It is a conversation with the candidate, those that provide interest in wanting to be a part of the commission. And I discuss it with co-chairs, but yeah, there's not a vote. There's not a vote or like an approval process or anything like that. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for Director Grant? Okay, moving into our new CPC business, and we're going to talk about the OPA report from yesterday.
So yeah, I don't think we have like a designated lead for this section. We could turn it over to, I don't know, Shailene or anyone on staff if you'd feel comfortable giving an update. I can also try to give a high-level overview, or Brandy or Reverend Hunter, whoever.
Douglas, go ahead and give a high-level overview, and then staff will chime in as needed.
Okay. So yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, OPA released the closed case summary in the Derek Hayden shooting investigation. And as a reminder, this is a incident that occurred in February of 2021, where a young man was essentially asking officers to kill him, and he was holding a knife. And when responding officers arrived on the scene, they drew their firearms and shot him within just a few kind of seconds of arriving. And so OPA investigated this case and the two officers who were involved and found that their report found that the officers were justified in using deadly force, both of them, but that they have a sustained finding as it relates to de-escalation, that they did not de-escalate according to department policy. And obviously, because they opened fired so quickly, the fact that they didn't de-escalate, create time, distance, and shielding is a contributing factor here in the death of our community member, Derek Hayden. And so, the OPA closed case summary was sent around to the commissioners, and so folks can review that. You can also, find it just through a quick internet search. And I think, this is obviously a topic that this is a case that was very similar to the Terry Caver case, and it's one that we've talked about a lot as a commission and in the behavioral health work group in terms of how officers respond to individuals in crisis, an individual in crisis with knives, and so I think, what would be helpful here is a discussion from the commission and also a vote to agree that we move forward with some sort of statement in response to this closed case summary. And I also want to point out that the response from SPD by way of discipline involved just a couple days suspension. I think it was 3 days suspension for one officer, 1 day suspension for the other officer, who were, found to not have de-escalated in this situation. And as we've mentioned before in previous meetings for very similar incidents where community members have died, it just, to me, it just doesn't feel appropriate or acceptable that the discipline response from SPD for not following policy in a way that leads to someone dying is suspension of your job for a very tiny handful of days. And so, we can have a discussion now as a CPC about this incident, about the case summary report, and I'm hoping that we can move forward with agreeing that we put out some sort of response to this finding from OPA and the incident itself.
Thank you, Douglas. Other responses?
I'll agree with Douglas. I mean, it seems to me that not following policy or out of policy should have a higher bar to that as a result in a death or of someone. So and so I mean, there's really a critical issue here, and that's a gap somewhere, and that gap needs to be looked at. And I mean, also maybe should something that the city council should be looking at, public safety. I mean, maybe that they should be looking at that gap also, not only us, but maybe public safety should be looking at the gap. Also, especially when this kind of occurrence happens in around the policy. And so we know that policy is so-called everything, but this is troubling. I mean, in that particular case, I mean, because I think the county had already failed this one with this gentleman, I believe. I mean, well, maybe that's a different case, but I won't ramble. I disagree with what Douglas has presented as something for us to think about, and how we can get some bite at if 2 days, 3 days suspension for life is just there's a problem with that as far as I can see. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Wall. Yes, Shailene?
I'm sorry, Reverend Hunter. I just wanted to add just a, I guess, food for thought is when I read that yesterday, and the ways in which that as commissioners, you all are thinking about how you can engage or just step into the conversation. I think that this case is a really interesting viewpoint on what seems to be almost logic, not taking a front seat, but more of a back seat, that if there was, in fact, sustained findings that officers did not, use proper de-escalation techniques, and they found that, but were able to use of force, and the use of force was proper because of the knife that was used, the directionality and positionality of the knife. It seems that there's a disconnect there, that if this is in direct correlation of this happened, then both should be wrong. So if they didn't use de-escalation techniques, then they also put potentially themselves in a position to be in a place by policy where they could use of force of a deadly nature. So that's where policies, I think, sometimes don't connect. But I think whether that is a takeaway that folks have or not, I think that one of the ways for you all to consider is that when these cases come about, the conversation of how we can be involved sooner, that they're coming down the pipeline and that they're going to be released. And then we have a conversation with OPA or SPD when we're having an upcoming public meeting or a community engagement event, that they're present to have these conversations and answer questions of, okay, well, why this? Especially for OPA, why is this connected? Because I can see community being frustrated of, this doesn't make sense to me. If they didn't de-escalate, how are you then able to use force of deadly nature, and that was acceptable within policy? Because on paper it is. So I think there's a conversation there, how we can engage with our partners for them to be more visible and answering to not just having what we see as the written word as released, but having the verbal conversation in front of community and also answering to all of you, and you're able to ask your questions. So I think at some point there should be conversation, whether it's at upcoming meetings with our partners or publicly here, of how can we coordinate these kinds of reports when they're released? How can we then coordinate here in our space as a CPC representing the community, here for the community, to ask these kinds of questions so they can respond? And I feel a lot of times Officer Mullins is fantastic, but it almost feels like Officer Mullins doesn't speak for you, that you almost feel the need to have to speak to the department or answer questions, when sometimes it's the higher brass, it's OPA that should be sitting here and answering these questions or offering the insights of the decisions that they made. So that was a little bit my frustration as staff. So I wanted to share that here and just offer that up as a food for thought.
Thank you, Shailene. Officer Mullins?
Yes, Shailene, thank you very much for articulating that. I don't think I could have done it as well as you just did, in that the disconnect between policies and tactics, and not to speak on whether the officers were right or wrong. I don't think I should do that. But the fact that we have a policy of de-escalation and shielding distance and time, it's easy to say that when you're not there. It's easy to say that when you're not responding to a high pressure situation. Not making an excuse for officers, not making an excuse at all, but maybe there needs to be a little bit more intense training when it comes to what we train to be there a lot of times in our training. We don't train to arrive a lot of times in these situations, and maybe there's just a slight bit of tweaking we need to do in terms of that adrenaline pump and arriving on a situation where officers' first stop process is, there's somebody in trouble, there's somebody that needs us, we need to get there before somebody gets hurt. And sometimes that, and getting out of your car to initially engage someone that you actually see who has a knife, sometimes it becomes an automatic thing. And then the second thought is maybe I should have, or maybe I should stay in my car, or maybe I should wait for more officers. or maybe I should wait for more resources. So sometimes the policies and our tactics and the way and de-escalation sometimes doesn't work. I think Shailene said it perfectly in that the presentation of the knife and how it happened and what exactly happened to make officers react the way they did all has to be taken into account. And sometimes maybe our the tweaking of our training slightly to encompass that initial arrival on the scene needs to be worked on, because this edge weapon thing it bothers me a lot because of the training, at least that we used to get when I came through the academy 1,000 years ago. Edge weapons were more dangerous than guns when we were coming through the academy. It struck home to us and was emphasized to us that this is something that you don't ever want to encounter, or that you need to take seriously. There's a video called Edge Weapons that we were able to see when we were in the academy that will chill you. And before I was a police officer, I never thought about knives as much as I do now because of that video and that training. I mean, literally in that video, there were people putting knives through car doors. So it makes you think. How dangerous knives are, and the footage and the distance that you need to be able to stay safe from knives. So and maybe a lot of people don't know, but knives go through our vests. Our vests don't stop knives. Our vests do not stop edge weapons. They stop bullets, but they don't stop edge weapons. So just a little tidbit. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Mullins. I appreciate your comments and your perspective. I see Ron's hand.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think it would be inappropriate for me to comment on the merits or lack thereof of this particular case report. However, I would like to ask a question, and in particular, I'd like to ask it of Officer Mullins. Officer Mullins, I think as a trained, experienced police officer of many years' experience, you're aware that the department is currently either starting or perhaps planning to start using a less lethal tool called BolaWare. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm slightly familiar with it. Yes.
And
I know.
go ahead, please.
I know the idea of it. I've seen it. I've seen videos of it. Yes, sir.
Okay. In your opinion, especially since this person was armed with a knife, would this have been of utility in this situation and possibly being able to prevent the sequence of events as they occurred?
I think anytime you propel something at someone, there's always a percentage of a chance that it will work, depending on the situation and depending on the officer, the individual officer, and depending on his adrenaline and how his body is handling it. Because we thought tasers were the end all, beat all.
Yeah, we
thought
did.
we thought tasers were
Yeah,
going
we did.
end it all. And we find out that there are flaws in that. We find out when we go to training that you got to be careful about who's touching the wires and whether this person is on something that may affect his health when you use the taser. You got to worry about age. You have to worry about whether this person is pregnant or not. There's and all the myriad of things that came out when we started using the taser nationwide, and finding out that there are problems with the taser. It works. I've seen the taser work, but I've seen the taser not work. So when people come out with newfangled things, I appreciate it. We're trying to work towards a better world where we don't have to hurt people. But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to see that gets initiated so that we can find out whether that's a better method than some of our other less than lethal devices. I'm willing to find out.
So
Anything that will help us.
you think that it would be a viable alternative?
I think,
particularly if it works. You've seen videos of its operation, correct?
yes,
And
I have.
it immobilizes the individual when it works.
Yes, it does when it works. And in this situation, it may or may not have worked great. And like I said, we'll see. We'll have to see. But anything that's going to help us, I welcome it. Anytime I don't have to use my gun, I welcome it.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
Officer
you.
Collins. And any other commissioners that want to get in here? Douglas?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate Shailene's comment that OPA's absence from our meetings in the past several weeks and months is noticed, and it's a barrier to our understanding of kind of their thinking in these investigations, and it's a barrier to public understanding as well of why they're making the decisions that they are, and the relationship between their investigations and the discipline that's been enacted by SPD as a result, because that's another kind of disconnect here is, they can put forward recommendations for findings or discipline, but it's ultimately up to SPD to implement them or not. And so not having a representative from OPA here is really challenging and not helpful and noticed. And I also just want to ask, Mr. Brian Maxey, you're on the call. I wonder if you could talk about the decision making that goes in or that went into this specific incident. When SPD received this sustained finding that these officers did not de-escalate, I wonder if you could help shine some light for us on how was the decision made that the 1 or 3 days suspension was the right level of discipline there. If you could help us understand that.
Thank you, Douglas. So on that particular point, I am not able to talk about the decision-making behind the scene that led into it for 2 reasons. One is I was not yet with the department as those decisions were being made by the chief, and I would have to defer to him. But secondly, even if I were, opening up that decision-making can complicate the successful enforcement of the discipline itself by creating an alternative record to the disciplinary action report that the chief issued, which we worked very hard to craft to explain the reasoning behind both the sustained discipline and what the discipline imposed was. In the background, those levels are discussed with the city attorney's office, and we operate within a range of comparatives in order to find out what the appropriate discipline could be. Over the years, we have been moving that up slowly. If you do it suddenly, then all of a sudden you find yourself losing in a legal capacity. But we have been bumping those up over time to try to right size the disciplinary approach. If I may just speak very briefly about the concepts about policy and training that are in the background here, because I know there's a lot of questions about OPA management action and recommendations that the department has done, and what have we done to date to respond to these issues. And there's a lot that is going on. Later today, we will be sharing a e-learning that was sent out to all the officers that explains the approach that we are looking for in edge weapon and person in crisis engagement. And what's really important about this that some members of the commission will see later is that historically, and I think Officer Mullins was referring to this when he was talking about his experience at the academy, police training has consisted in large part about these very specific critical events, usually in the videos used and in the examples used, where the officers are horribly killed or maimed or come to some tragic outcome. And it reinforces for officers that that is the likely outcome of a encounter with a person with a knife. What the training that we're putting out, that we're demonstrating later today, and in some of our past trainings, we are trying to move towards positive reinforcement. This is what we want you to do. This is a successful resolution to these types of encounters, not this is what you need to watch out for and protect yourself at all costs. Rather, here's how you successfully navigate these. And it's a shift in training that's happening nationally, and it certainly is happening here. We also have we've developed a in-person edge weapon training program. And the difficulty we're having right now is simply finding a location to have it, because a lot of these crisis events and people with knives, what we're training is that officers engage and keep time, distance, shielding, communication. And often these things are mobile. They're complicated. They're a person moving through a neighborhood, and the officers have to assess, is there access to potential victims? What are the immediate threats? And to navigate those as they change in real time. So what we're looking for is a large area where we can do a multi-block training with different variables being thrown at officers. And I think the suggestion earlier was that from Officer Mullins about that moment of arrival with that sort of adrenaline and stress already infused into that situation, that can be part of a training that is done in a large outside area. We're just having a hard time finding the location to do this where we're not going to create a lot of alarm. So, but that has been developed, and we are moving towards that. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. I'm going to try and press us a little to move on this. I'm hearing that as a commission, we would like to formally write a letter, share our disappointment that this is not working. So I don't know if we want to empower the staff, the co-chairs, to write a letter, to invite someone from OPA to the community engagement meeting. But is there a suggestion about next steps?
Both of those sound great to me.
Well, do we need a motion to have the commission and staff send a letter using these comments?
Yeah, we would need a motion to ask the co-chairs to work with the staff to get a letter out based on what we've heard today, and asking them to come to the CPC meeting, but also to express our concern and that kind of stuff. So I'm not the wordsmith person, so but other people know how to do that better than I do. But that would be what we would need to do.
And we're recommending that someone from OPA and SPD come to a meeting. Is that what you're suggesting, Reverend Walden?
No, my suggestion was for OPA to come. I mean,
OPA,
because it
okay.
was their report, and
Okay.
we've already heard from the CEO. I mean, from Mr. Maxey on where
Okay.
the police department is right now and what they're doing. So the OPA is who we would want to address that to for right now. I mean, I don't know. I mean, unless Douglas have something else or other people want to add something, but that would be my suggestion. But Douglas might want to add something.
Well, I'd be open for a motion.
I think it'd be great to hear from SPD too. So yeah, I mean, I'll make a motion. I'll move to ask staff to work with co-chairs to put out a letter / statement in response, expressing what was brought up today and responding to this OPA report, and also to work with co-chairs to invite SPD and a representative from SPD and OPA to our next CPC meeting, so we can discuss with them directly about their decision making and the impact.
I agree.
There's a second?
I'll step away from the chair. I'll step away and I'll do a second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that the co-chairs work with staff in crafting a letter of response to the report that came out yesterday from OPA, and that we invite representative from SPD and OPA to next commission meeting. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? The motion is carried. Okay, thank you. Thank you all. And now for some work group updates for a few minutes. Let's see, police practices, that would be me. In our next work group meeting, which is February 8th, we will begin the management action review process using the form that the commission approved at our last meeting. And the accountability letter went out to Interim Chief Diaz, Inspector General Judge, Director Meyerberg, and Dr. Oftelli. That went out on January 21st. We have yet to receive a response, but when we do, we will inform the commission. It's the end of my report. Community engagement.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Community engagement is still working hard on the 4 core areas from the monitors report. I would like to ask that as many of the commissioners as possible help to send out the invite to your contacts so that we can continue to build upon the robust participation that we're having in the meetings as is. The more the merrier. So I did a big push out this last time, but I really am asking each one of you to help propel that. So the work is continuing with the monitors assessments.
And it's a community meeting.
The next meeting is on next Tuesday, the 8th at 6 o'clock, and a reminder notice will be going out today. And please, please, if there's anything you would like me to add or suggest in these meetings, I also inspire you to let me know. So, but please, I really want everybody to take a conscious mind to help to advertise the meeting out to your contacts. Thank you.
Thank you, Felicia. Is there someone to give an update on the state legislative agenda? I know Austin usually does that and he's not available.
Austin's not here, but actually I I do have, luckily enough, I do have the update for state legislative agenda that was given. Nia is out today because y'all, in case you see her, today's her birthday. I like to say that out loud. She's probably going to be upset tomorrow, but I'll deal with that tomorrow. So, state legislative agenda. The cutoff for reading bills out of committee and into the record on the floor is Thursday, so tomorrow 2-3, except for House Fiscal Committee and the Senate Ways and Means Committee and Transportation Committee. Cutoff for those is 2/7, so that is next week. We did submit a statement in opposition to SB 5919. It falls under our priorities and reflects other bills that we voted to oppose. And also we signed on in opposition of HB 2037. And the WCPA letter in opposition to the legislation, and Brandy signed on behalf of the CPC. So those are the updates from SLA. We can send around we're very close to the first half of session is over. It's over a 60-day session. So we only have about a little over a half of session left. So please, if you are all welcome to come to the SLA meetings, please join us for those. And also I can give an update for behavioral health and complainant appeals. I know we also do not have folks representative for those. So if that's okay, I can give those updates as well.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so for behavioral health, the op-ed that was crafted is being updated. We had a conversation yesterday about, since the release of the OPA case dealing the death of Derek Hayden, we thought it was appropriate to update that op-ed, the behavioral op-ed. So there will be some updates made and that will be submitted to the Seattle Times. And I know there was a request for us to see the op-ed, but once it's submitted to the Seattle Times, usually it's a kind of exclusive rights for them, and then we'll share around that link and post that. For complainant appeals, Nia is starting to put together background documents for the work group so they can really get underway and get started with that work. And that's it for those two work groups.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for a robust conversation about a variety of topics. I really appreciate all of your input. And now I'll turn it over to our executive director to wrap up the meeting.
Could we say happy Black History Month though?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's like, hey, thank you for just letting us get our Black history out there, which is every day, but we know that February is pronounced, but Black history is every day in America. It's American history.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that, Reverend Walden. I was going to add it to wrap us up and send us out too. You're absolutely right. Black History Month is every day, and to acknowledge contributions that Black folks have made here in America would be remiss of us not to announce that today, but we do want to remind folks this every day because we are a tremendous group of people. I want to thank everybody for attending this morning's meeting, and again for the robust conversation. We have a few action items that we'll be following up on, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. This will conclude our meeting. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, and nice job, Reverend Hunter.
Thank you. My pleasure, anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Hunter.
Thank you, Reverend Hunter.
Recording stopped.